couldn't figure that out. Okay, I'm Andy. My husband Craig and I moved here from Colorado, and we purchased 40 acres 2.5 years ago. Moved on site about 1.5 years ago, and we are creating a small cooperative homestead, for lack of a better word. We call it an intentional community, but then people start talking about hippies and blah blah blah, and we're really focused on self-sufficiency. So my background is in sustainability. I was a master gardener in Colorado. We love growing food. That's just basically what we want to do. We want to grow all of our own food like you guys are wanting to do, right? And Colorado did not look the same anymore. It was not the sweet little hamlet that we moved to 30 years ago. So we decided it was time to look for a new place, and we are so happy we did. It's an awesome place. But our history is that we were in Colorado for I was 25, Craig was about 30 years. He broke his back skiing his second year there. He's from upstate New York. T12 paraplegic. I met him after the fact, so that was 96. We met in 98. We started dating in 2000. And in 2000, we got married in 2006. And right around that time, we bought a house, double wide, on property we didn't own. So it was zoned trailer park. We didn't own the land. We couldn't farm it. We couldn't garden it. We couldn't, do anything to the land. We did build a garden box on the deck, but we really didn't even have much space on either side of the house. So we, through the Sustainability Council that I worked for, started a land share program where people who had land but didn't have the time to garden it would partner with other people who didn't have land. And so this picture on the top left is us gardening this Priest Creek farm with our friends. And Craig grew up on a farm in upstate New York, or not a farm, but a big property with a huge, acre-sized garden that was just for their family and extended family. And so they grew a lot of their own food. He grew up growing food. We had a garden too in Virginia. I grew up in Northern Virginia. So gardening is definitely in our blood, and growing our own food is in our blood. And we're because of our sort of backgrounds too. We don't trust the food system. We kind of see what is going on with the food system, and less do we want to buy from mass sprayed farms. So enter the Tower Garden. That's this little buddy here, and that far right picture. And the picture in the middle, actually, let me just comment on it, is basil. You can't really tell. It doesn't quite look like basil because the leaves are kind of curly and faint and whatever, but this thing excels at anything green, right? And that was the biggest thing that we were most shocked by, was the basil. So I had to throw that picture in there, but you can see this picture does have the lights. There are lights that come on it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Tower Garden, but we're going to talk about water-based systems, growing systems versus dirt. So that's how we got to Tennessee. Well, I didn't really talk about how we got to Tennessee, but that's a whole other story. So water-based growing systems are different, obviously, from dirt. Different problems, different solutions. We still grow in both, and I think everybody should try and grow in both because they don't cover everything. You can't grow root veg in this, so you couldn't grow any potatoes or any carrots or any kind of root veg in that. And I do love the dirtlessness of this, how clean the plants come off this, I just made that word up. Yeah, but I love it because, and I'm not like, our house isn't spotless, I'm not OCD, but I do love the fact that I don't necessarily have to wash anything off this food. I can pick it, and I can also grow year round, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But this is just some pictures. Here's just some terms, and I'll read them to you because I know in the back of the house you can't see them and they're a little blurry, but this is aeroponics. So these plants are in this net pot, and the water, this is a 20-gallon reservoir, trickles up through a pump system up the center, and then sprays in the shower cap right here. All of the plants then get trickled water with nutrients. And had this been growing in here, it would have roots really long, because these are just kind of new and they don't have that kind of root system yet. But I'll show you a couple of pictures of that. So basically they're suspended and they're getting dosed with nutrients and water about 15 minutes every hour, and then it's off for 45 minutes. So it's really, really energy efficient as well. Aquaponics, everybody's probably familiar with that term. It's very similar to hydroponics and aeroponics, but you're using the fish to feed, which is next level. I think it's great to use the fish to do that because it's a really powerful nutrient source. Hydroponics, the plants are actually just in the water. This isn't really hydroponics, but this was actually a butter lettuce that we just got that came with the root on it, and then we're just regrowing it, right? Hydroculture is growing in medium, so like clay pellets, gravel, and then the solution is delivered to the roots. And then soilless mixes, I think you said you brought some, is this cocoa hair here? Yeah. Yeah. So Karen brought some cocoa hair, little pellets that you can kind of grow in, or at least just start in. I have a friend, I'm going to show one of her pictures. She has 10 foot, this is 5 foot, not quite, 5.5 feet, so it's maybe a little less than 5 feet, but, so that's 5 stacks. So she goes 10 stacks high, bigger pump. You can go as high as you have space, which is great because if you don't have a lot of space, then you're utilizing that vertical space, right? If you've got a high tunnel greenhouse, or even in your home, you've got space, or even in this beautiful room, you've got space, right, that you're not using up here. So in one way, it's kind of the future of growing for sure, and using space that we've never utilized before, going vertical. So, terms. Here's a picture of the roots. That far left is one of these units, and the roots just grow into each unit. There's a separation between each, and I'm gonna do this and just kind of show you what the inside, save you from coming up here and looking at it. They all look like this, where the holes in each of them have, connect down, and the water just trickles down and is kind of directed towards each net pot. So they can fill up. Like I put all my little guys at the top and the big ones at the bottom, and then I will grab, like we had squash on this and tomato on this all summer, and I was having to, I'm sure you did too, have to go in and pull the roots out because they're just hanging in that dirt, or in the water, I mean, and you want them to fight for growth, So I think this image for me is like as above, so below, right? If your plants have really healthy roots, your plants are going to be healthy, and being able to see the roots is one of the benefits of growing in this way. But roots can get crowded, and if they're too crowded, they're fighting for nutrients. And before you know it, that soil doesn't have any nutrients, right? And then your plants start to suffer. And when your plants start to suffer, it sends that chemical message out to the bugs out there to come in and break you down, right? And so that's when the aphids start to show up. So it's really a kind of a fine balance. Why we've stayed with towers. So we've had this for 10 years. We have 3. And the farm collective that we have just purchased 12 more. So we're going to try and really grow through winter if we can. We have to build a room first, and now we're into December. But we'll start earlier because we have those. We'll maybe put our starters on them. And why we stayed with towers over the last 10 years. The one on the left is kind of apples to oranges. It's got dirt in it. My neighbor has one. She grew like a champ on it all summer. But I just wanted something without dirt because we were already growing in our dirt beds. I wanted to stick with not dirt. The second one from the left doesn't have enough room for the roots. The third one from the left, or second from the right, doesn't have enough water in the base. I was talking earlier about how there's so much R&D went into this. The inventor of the tower garden started at the land in Epcot and spent 10 years tweaking this R&D. How big the base needed to be, how big the net pots needed to be, for it to actually excel at growing greens, because that's what it's meant to grow, is greens. It does grow vines really well, but it was designed to grow greens. So when the base, like the second one from the right, is this big, I'm gonna have to fill that every day. We can leave. Craig and I travel. My husband is a trainer for the airline industry on handling customers with disabilities, so he's gone right now. He's off and gone. And we can leave for 2 weeks and not fill this 20-gallon reservoir. Come back, do a nice big salad, and it's automated. So you've got to have something with a base in it. And then the one on the right cracks me up. All the plants are growing into each other. And the first time I saw that, I thought, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And I can't believe people are buying that. And I don't think it's selling very well, because I haven't seen a lot of those ads anymore. But all the plants are growing in towards that light in the middle. So it's efficient on lighting, because it's just using one light. Anyway, enough said.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the towers in Idaho. My friend Kathy has 14 or so of them that are the 10 stacks high. And what's key about this is that when Tim really fine-tuned the design, this is like the 4th or 5th design that then they finally released this design. He gave it to the University of Mississippi Ag program to study. And that's where they got some of these statistics from. So it grows 3 times as fast as dirt gardens, with 3 times the nutrient density in the food, because it's just constantly getting those nutrients, right? Where dirt can get depleted, and you're constantly having to feed the dirt, right? With 90 to 98% less water, bless you. More roots mean more oxygen, more food getting into the plants, more life in the plant, and then less pests. We were talking earlier about the aphids that you can get on these, but again, if the plants are grown right and the system is done right, you're not going to get as many pests. And I haven't seen that. I definitely saw a lot of pests on the dirt gardens, especially like beetles and crickets and grasshoppers, and I didn't see aphids, but well, ladybugs are good, but we saw those too on the dirt gardens, and I didn't see a single bug. I didn't see we had horned tomato worms. I didn't see that on the tower. I'm trying to think I mean, there were just so many less pests on it this summer. We had 3 of them going this summer. So less competition as well, because they all have their own little space. Although if you do put mint on an aeroponic garden, it is going to find its way to another net pot somehow miraculously, because that's what mint does. Very beginner friendly. Like I said, the less you tinker with this, the better. I'm a tinkerer, and as a master gardener, I was like worried about the pH and worried about the heat, the temperature of the water in Colorado, and even inside. And so I was tinkering with it, and it wasn't doing great. And then as soon as I just left it alone, I think we went on a trip, and I was like, well, it's just gotta survive. It's gotta be okay on its own. And we came back 2 weeks later to a salad bar. It was amazing. And you can have year-round cultivation on it. So, we all kind of stopped gardening at this point, but if you wanted lettuce year-round, because the lettuce starts looking worse and worse as we get deeper into winter, right? Because it comes from further and further away. Then that's a good way to grow it. These are all the little extras that come with it. The pump, the lights are extra, but the nutrients, the pH kit, that's what those pictures are, the timer as well. This is just how big the pump is. It's a tiny little pump, it's just a fish tank pump. And it really doesn't use much electricity at all. We're off-grid, I didn't say that, so we live in a yurt, off-grid. We have solar power, we have 4 48-volt batteries, and we ran these all summer, and we didn't notice it affecting the batteries at all. So very little energy. But you, of course, do have to worry about the things like the water quality, the level of the water, pH, the lighting, the timers, all those little extra things, but it's no different from the rest of your garden world. So here's a little story time. The applications for this, for me, were the funnest part. So I love growing it for myself, but I also love giving it to the community. And we started with the food bank. The food bank in Colorado at that time wasn't accepting green produce. So none of the members who relied on this for food were getting green produce. So we got a funder to purchase 4 of the tower gardens for the food bank, and one of our local churches, the Methodist Church, gave us the space to grow them because the food bank didn't have the space. And within 6 months, we had yielded 60 pounds of leafy greens for the food bank. So it grows very fast. And it was really cool because 3 of them were in the church, and one of them was in this adorable classroom, this picture in the middle, and the little girl at the bottom, eating her lettuce at the end. We started from seed with them, so there's curriculum around this too, so a great model for schools because then you're teaching kids to grow, and they can get, kids that grow food eat good food, right? And so they were getting their hands in it, and I decided at the end, we started from seed, so the rock wool cubes that come with it are just these little, and you can come up here and see, but they break apart pretty easy. And you put a little seed in it, you put a little vermiculite in it, and keep it moist, keep it dark, and then the seeds pop up. And so we started from seed, and then we had a salad party at the end. We donated the bags at the bottom are what we donated, but then they did let them eat off of it as well. But for her, this little girl, for her to start that seed and then eat the lettuce at the end, obviously that seed is not the lettuce seed because we know how big those are, that's a lima bean, but yeah, it was really cool for her to see. But the coolest thing was we did a taste test. So I went to the store and we grew like kale, lettuce, basil, parsley, like 3 or 4 herbs and 3 or 4 lettuces and 2 of each. And whatever we grew, I bought at the store. And I put them out and I labeled them A and B, and I had them test, and they marked what they thought was their food. And I said, think about it, it's gonna be more flavorful, it's gonna be more vibrant, you're gonna feel like maybe more energy, or connected to it, and so they just closed their eyes. These 9 little 9-year-olds went through, and they, hands down, every single one of them picked the Tower Garden lettuce, which was really, really cool. So other models, we've had them in the restaurant, we use them at events, we take them to the farmer's market. Yeah, that's the tower. And the cracky system, Karen brought in some of these. The net pots are bigger, but they're, they're built to fit in these jars. And I don't know anything about the name Cracky. I just realized, I'm like, I don't know where that name even comes from.
He's the inventor.
Right, but I don't know anything about him. Whether he's German or whatever, right? But
Hawaii.
oh, thank you.
There you go.
Okay.
So who can teach on this cracky method?
It's a wick.
Was that?
It's a wick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a
This,
wick.
exactly. Yeah. So the water comes up. You could let them sit in water too, like we are with this guy, right? But it's a really cool method because it's pretty no frills, really inexpensive way to grow in your windowsill without dirt in the off season or however. No electricity, so a little bit better off grid for me.
And you can leave it for like 6
yeah.
weeks or something.
Right.
So these little pellets I found too are kind of cool. Pebbles. They're called LECA, L-E-C-A. I don't know what that stands for. But they're for using in a system like that, and you can even use them in your house plants, and they retain water for 6 weeks. So you just water them and go away and come home, and your house plants are all doing great.
That's cool. And same, you're growing your leafy greens, your herbs, anything that needs that extra, like more water. I think that's the big key, is for these types of plants that, you're over-watering. If they're all growing in the same, I think of square foot garden, right? And they're all growing in the same square foot garden bed that you have. Some of those plants don't need as much water as the others. So I think for me, I've learned to separate the really thirstier plants out. Don't grow them like with my potatoes and stuff anymore. Yeah, that's a wrap. So that's us. That's the Shambhala Collective. That's land before we even started putting anything on it, in the background, and then a little bit more about Tower Garden and myself, if you wanna, we were talking in this table about seeing photos of our yurts and stuff, so if you wanna reach out, please reach out, but, yeah, I love the tower, just for the simple fact that it's saving water. In Colorado, that was a big deal for us, for sure.
How many little pockets are there?
20. But you can buy the extension by itself, and I mean, obviously I'm an affiliate, cause I'm saying we, you know, but this is actually a really good business model. Like this is a side income for me. So I feel like anybody that's always talking food and growing food, this is a really good side business model. Yeah?
Question, for the tower that you're going indoors,
Yeah.
do you have to rotate them around so they can get equal light?
The lights come on it. I don't have a picture of it, a full picture of it. I think
So it's artificial
the
light,
first
not
slide.
natural light.
Yeah, this is the picture on the right. It's you can't quite see them. They're like 4 arms that come off, and they bend, so they'll move away from the plants as the plants grow, or you can put them right next to the plants. You can also, there's a tomato cage you could get for it, and you could put T5 lights on that tomato cage, and then, you know, you just have to sort of steer the plants away from them as they grow towards it. But we tried it without lights the first winter, because like I said, I'm a tinkerer. I'm like, do I need the lights? We have a sunroom. But you know, your windows are treated. So the plants aren't getting that like full spectrum light. So they're not gonna grow as fast as they would if they were outside. If that answers your question. Yeah.
So for the nutrients, what is the source?
The source,
Is it organic, non-organic?
common question, but that's not a thing, because minerals are inorganic by nature. They're below the toxins, right? So, yeah, we just harvest them sustainably and formulate the A and B blend. Again, being a tinkerer, I was like, I'm just gonna buy it from my local hydroponic shop and see if that's better. I'm gonna try and make it, see if that's better, you know, so I tinkered a little bit, and I never got the plants to grow as great as they did with the Tower Garden formula. So you do buy it from Tower Garden.
But, I mean, you could make your own.
You could.
You could make your own like tea, you know,
But
like what?
compost tea,
Well, you could take like, you know, rabbit, chicken.
Oh, yeah.
And emulsify it, and strain it, and use that.
Absolutely.
As a fertilizer too, as long as you're comfortable.
yeah, and you could swap out the tank in the bottom for fish.
Yeah.
It would have to have light, right? It would have to be a different tank. You can't have that, you know, plastic down there. But yeah, you could have fish down in there too. Yeah.
Is it LED?
The new lights are LED. Yeah, the first ones were T5, but the new ones are LED.
How much does it cost for one?
The starting cost, I mean, this is another thing we were talking about. The price point sounds expensive at first. 600 to 800, 850, depending on if you get the lights. But your ROI on it is quick. And you know, we were talking about how you could make this, you know, but PVC's not cheap anymore.
Yeah, I've tried
And-
making them once, it's not as easy as.
And then
it
it's not
looks.
mobile.
Well, see, when you start to heat up that stuff and try to bend them out,
Yeah,
cause you know, they got the square tubes that fit over the four
Right.
by fours and the 6x6s.
right.
And it's a lot of work. Me and my brother spent several hours trying to get 2 of them done. It worked great for strawberries especially. I mean,
Cool.
he just had strawberries just solid red kinda.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen tubes, you know, this way
Yeah.
with
yeah.
holes in it. That's more hydroponic than aeroponic, but.
Right, the fans on end.
Because you're
so-
using more water with hydroponics. Again, like, we don't have that problem here, but we still generally, as a planet, have that problem, even though we don't have that problem, right? So it's still good to conserve water, or reuse it and recycle it. But the other piece too, for me, is the sustainability of this model. So we've had this 10 years. There's a little, this one's from a different unit, so there's a little discoloring on this one section. But the rest of these, this is our unit, I know, this one came from, a show tower that we had, so we just mixed and matched now that we have all 3 of them. But, it doesn't, I mean, unless it's outside, it's not gonna change that color. And we did have them outside this summer, and they still didn't really fade much. There's
Did you-
been no breakdown in 10
Did
years.
you notice with the aeroponics compared to hydroponics, you don't get the slime all over the roots?
No. No.
That's a
slime on
huge
the
thing
roots.
with hydroponics sometimes.
They're
it's
dry.
just, oh,
Yeah.
nasty
What you
slime.
will get if you're on city water is you will get calcification, mineral calcification around the net pots that you could just wipe off, or at the end, you just leave it, and at the end, you citric acid soak everything, and it just comes off like that. It's not a problem, but some people who don't like that look of, junk growing around it, I have a couple of friends that have one that, it looks like this all year, and ours never looks like
Do
this.
you know, is it the same size pump for the 10 foot it is for the 5?
It is not. So if you go higher than 7, this is 5, if you go higher than 7, you need a bigger pump. Yeah.
Can you grow that in a basement or is that too?
Yes, you could grow it in a closet. I have a friend in Denver,
It's about 60
she's living in
degrees.
400 square feet and she's growing it in her,
I was just talking about temperature wise.
yeah, that too. I mean, 55 degrees.
Yeah, it's about 60, but
Yeah.
it wants to be 60.
Yeah, I'd say 55 would be one to be your lowest, or even 50 if you're not growing tomatoes. Yeah. And we do grow tomatoes inside. So back to your question about the window, we didn't have full spectrum lights. We just had the green spectrum lights that they sell this with. But we had it in the sunroom and all the plants still flowered and fruited. So, yeah.
What do you do for pollination? You said mentioned squash.
When it's outside, that's not an issue. We didn't grow the squash inside. The only
Okay.
thing we grew inside were that we had to pollinate were tomatillos, tomatoes, and maybe the snap peas. I don't know if you have to pollinate snap peas, but we had a fan on it.
That worked?
And it worked fine. Because tomatoes just need to be like oscillated, they don't need to be like paintbrushed like squash does with the 2 separate female and male flowers, so, yeah.
So I just wanna mention that, Jed and I got these last year, kind of by accident, somebody was selling them, used, and I was like, yeah, I wanna try it, I mean, I wanna have fresh lettuce all winter. And it was amazing, the amount of produce we got off of those.
Prolific.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
You can't keep up.
And so fresh,
Yeah.
and just so convenient, so yeah, I'm gonna do it again this year. I was telling him I don't wanna do it, I'm so tired of gardening. I just picked our fall garden, like before the frost, and I'm like, I am done, I'm retired for 2 months. And now I'm like, I kinda want my lettuce.
Without the dirt.
Without the dirt.
Yeah.
Do
But I-
you have to flush the, system for like 2 weeks before you harvest?
No,
You know?
no, and you're harvesting.
So you
takes
can eat that
takes
chemical
about-
you're putting into it, or
From,
the-
so you can buy starters, but at this crowd, you don't do that, right? You start your own, right? But you can. All the city slickers would buy them from companies that sell for tower gardens, okay? I always start from seed. I bought those once and they came with bugs, and then I was like, what? Why would I do this? So, of course, they were shipped in the winter, but that's why they came with bugs. But from seed to the first harvest is about 6 weeks, and right? Maybe 4,
Maybe
depending.
4,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then from then on, you're harvesting continually for about another 4 or 5 months. I mean, you could let it for things like kale that are just going to keep making
Yeah.
lettuce or leaves. Basil. That basil plant is probably 5 months old. So we just let stuff go. That's its second life. I always left basil twice to harvest. So I whack it way down and make pesto and let it, leaf
yeah,
out
we
again.
did that many times.
Right.
And actually, we took the basil plants out of the tower and put them in the ground in May, and they prospered all summer.
So that's another great application for it, is using it for starters. Because they're strong, because they've been getting just jacked with nutrients. So,
How often do you have to add the nutrients to the water?
good question. So it kind of depends. The instructions say every time that you add water to add nutrients, but I've learned over the last 10 years that I sure don't need to do that. I can save and just add nutrients, more nutrients as the plants get bigger. So the first time you add nutrients, you add two cups of each A and B into that whole 20-gallon tank, and then it's a cup for every 10 gallons that you add. So every time technically you add 10 gallons, you would add a cup of A and B. But I didn't, I'd skip. So I'd do every other. I'd fill it with water, and then the next time I fill it with water, I'd fill it with nutrients. And did fine. But, you know, I mean, eventually I was like, do I need this? Plus it comes in a liquid form. We're still trying to, and I think we're getting there because the company just restructured. So hopefully we're gonna get the powder. They just don't trust the consumer to mix it right. So, cause it would be a waste to have too much powder, you know? So, but I'm hoping that the Tower Farm, because there's two models, Tower Farm, which is anyone over 20 towers is considered a Tower Farm. And you get a whole dosing system, you get the powder with your dosing system, and they set up tanks for you, and the tanks just pump right in, and you don't have to fill it, which I'm like, for 15 of them, we might just suck it up and buy the dosing system. So, but good question, because yeah, it's technically every time, but I've noticed that you don't have to do that. I love the questions, good questions. No more? One more.
Can you go to the last slide so I can take a picture of it? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you email Pam that slide there so she
Yeah.
can post it?
Yeah, you might already have it,
Okay.
but I'll send it to you again.
Okay,
I
that'd be
redid them a little bit, so.
That way everybody will have your contact.
Yeah. Stop on this.